the United States Navy has deployed Carrier Strike Group 3, its largest military force to the Middle East in over a year, positioning more than 10 warships within striking distance of Iran's 60% enriched uranium stockpiles, as tensions reach their highest point since the 2025 nuclear strikes. This massive naval buildup, through the critical Strait of Hormuz, represents America's most significant show of force in the region, since Operation Midnight Hammer devastated Iran's nuclear program just 8 months ago. At the center of this armada sits the USS Abraham Lincoln, a nuclear-powered supercarrier stretching over 1,000 feet across the Arabian Sea. With nearly 90 aircraft on deck and 6,000 sailors aboard, the Lincoln serves as a floating city of American military power under U.S. Central Command Authority, positioned just 500 miles from Iran's southern coast, where the Islamic Republic maintains 440 kilograms of weapons-grade nuclear material. The carrier's presence alone sends an unmistakable message, but what surrounds the Lincoln tells the real story of America's strategic intent. 3 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers escort the massive carrier: the USS Truxtun, USS Spruance, and USS Frank E. Petersen Jr. Each destroyer bristles with Tomahawk cruise missiles capable of reaching targets 1,500 to 2,500 kilometers deep inside Iranian territory. These aren't defensive weapons. They're precision strike tools designed to hit command centers, military installations, and strategic infrastructure with devastating accuracy. The Lincoln Strike Group represents just the tip of America's naval spear. 3 additional destroyers, the USS Delbert D. Black, USS McFall, and USS Mitchell, patrol regional waters independently, extending the Navy's reach across the Persian Gulf and Arabian Sea. 3 littoral combat ships based in Bahrain stand ready for specialized missions, including the dangerous task of clearing sea mines should Iran choose to block the Strait of Hormuz. Beneath the waves, America's most secretive weapons lurk in absolute silence. The nuclear-powered submarine USS South Dakota provides intelligence gathering and strike capabilities from the depths, while the USS Georgia, SSGN 729, carries up to 154 Tomahawk missiles in its converted ballistic missile tubes. These Ohio-class guided missile submarines represent some of the Navy's most potent weapons, their locations kept classified even as they position for potential strikes. The current crisis traces back to December 28, 2025, when protests erupted across Iran amid a deepening economic crisis. What began as demonstrations at Tehran's Grand Bazaar quickly spread to dozens of cities, with Iranians demanding change from their increasingly isolated government. The regime's response was swift and brutal. On January 8, 2026, authorities implemented a near-total internet shutdown and launched what observers called Iran's Babi Yar, a crackdown so severe that death tolls quickly climbed into the tens of thousands. Iranian security forces fired live ammunition into crowds of protesters, and President Donald Trump faced a familiar dilemma. Iran's nuclear program, despite suffering major damage in the June 2025 strikes, remained a persistent threat according to International Atomic Energy Agency assessments. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi has repeatedly warned that the Islamic Republic still possessed enough material for 10 nuclear weapons if processed further. The ongoing protests presented both an opportunity and a danger, a chance to pressure a weakened regime, but also the risk that a cornered Iran might lash out with whatever nuclear capabilities it retained. The Navy's deployment began on January 26, 2026, as the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group received orders to transit to the Middle East. The timing wasn't coincidental. Intelligence reports indicated Iran's leadership was fracturing under the pressure of nationwide unrest, while the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps prepared for potential American intervention. German Chancellor Merz publicly suggested that Iran's leadership was in its final days and weeks, reflecting a growing international consensus that the regime faced its gravest existential threat since the 1979 revolution. Trump's announcement of the naval deployment carried his characteristic blend of showmanship and steel. "A massive armada is heading to Iran," he posted on Truth Social. "It's moving quickly, with great power, enthusiasm, and purpose. It's a larger fleet, headed by the great aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, than that sent to Venezuela." Like with Venezuela, it's ready, willing, and able to rapidly fulfill its mission, with speed and violence, if necessary. The reference to Operation Midnight Hammer was unmistakable. That June 2025 operation had marked the first American attack on Iranian soil since 1988, utilizing B-2 stealth bombers to deliver massive bunker-busting bombs against 3 nuclear facilities. The strikes at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan had set Iran's nuclear program back an estimated 2 years, though Israeli intelligence suggested the actual delay might be measured in months rather than years. Operation Midnight Hammer demonstrated America's ability to strike Iran's most heavily defended targets with precision and overwhelming force. At 2:10 a.m. local time on June 22, 2025, the lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator bombs on the underground Fordo facility. These 30,000-pound bunker busters represented the largest conventional weapons in America's arsenal, designed specifically to destroy deeply buried targets like Iran's nuclear installations. The operation's success came through meticulous deception. On June 21st, the Air Force deployed 6 B-2 bombers toward Guam in what appeared to be a routine training mission. Meanwhile, the actual strike force approached Iran from a completely different direction, achieving total tactical surprise. General Dan Kane later revealed that very few people in Washington knew the timing or nature of the plan, emphasizing the operation's unprecedented secrecy. Iran's response to those strikes proved telling. On June 23rd, Iranian missiles struck Qatar's Al Udeid Air Base, which hosts American troops. Yet satellite imagery showed that military aircraft had been evacuated in advance, and no casualties resulted from the attack. Iran's retaliation was widely seen as a face-saving exercise, strong enough to claim they had responded, but carefully calibrated to avoid escalating to full-scale war. Now, 8 months later, the Navy's massive deployment suggests Trump believes Iran requires a more sustained show of force. The protests have fundamentally weakened the regime's legitimacy, while international sanctions have strangled Iran's economy. Yet the Islamic Republic retains formidable military capabilities, particularly its ability to disrupt global energy supplies by threatening the Strait of Hormuz choke point. Through this vital waterway flows roughly 20% of the world's oil supply. Iran's strategy has long centered on holding this choke point hostage, using the threat of closure to deter American military action. The country's naval forces, while outmatched by American technology, excel in asymmetric warfare alongside proxy groups like the Houthi movement. Small, fast attack boats armed with anti-ship missiles and mines could inflict significant damage before being destroyed. The Navy's current deployment appears designed to neutralize this threat. The Lincoln's air wing includes F-35C Lightning II fighters, the most advanced stealth aircraft in the American arsenal. These fifth-generation fighters can penetrate heavily defended airspace to destroy Iran's anti-ship missile sites and naval bases. Meanwhile, the carrier's F/A-18E Super Hornets and EA-18G Growler electronic warfare jets provide the sustained air power needed to maintain control of the Strait of Hormuz. On February 3, 2026, tensions escalated when an F-35C from the Lincoln shot down an Iranian Shahed 139 drone that aggressively approached the carrier. The incident occurred as the Lincoln transited international waters roughly 500 miles from Iran's coast. According to Central Command, the drone unnecessarily maneuvered toward the ship, forcing the F-35 pilot to engage in self-defense. This aerial encounter highlighted the knife-edge nature of the current standoff. Iranian drones regularly probe American defenses, testing response times and rules of engagement. Each incident carries the risk of miscalculation that could trigger a broader conflict. The fact that an advanced stealth fighter was required to destroy a relatively simple drone underscored how even minor provocations can escalate in the current environment. Iran's maritime forces responded with their own provocations. On the same day as the drone incident, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps gunboats harassed the commercial tanker Stena Imperative in the Strait of Hormuz. 2 days later, Iranian forces seized 2 foreign oil tankers near Farsi Island, transferring them to the port of Bushehr, along with their 15 crew members. These tanker seizures represent Iran's primary asymmetric weapon against American naval power. While Iranian forces cannot match the Lincoln strike group in direct combat, they can impose significant economic costs by disrupting commercial shipping. Each seized vessel raises insurance rates for the entire region, while the threat of broader maritime conflict sends oil prices climbing on global markets. Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently characterized America's vulnerable position in the region, noting that 30,000 to 40,000 American troops stationed across 8 or 9 facilities remain within the reach of an array of thousands of Iranian one-way unmanned aerial vehicles and Iranian short-range ballistic missiles. This vulnerability explains the Navy's emphasis on advanced air defense systems. The deployment includes additional terminal high-altitude area defense systems and Patriot missile batteries, with Patriots appearing at Qatar's Al Udeid Air Base last week. These defensive systems would prove crucial if Iran responds to any American strike with its arsenal of ballistic missiles. Iran has demonstrated the ability to accurately target specific buildings, as shown in their 2020 strike on Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq, following the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Yet the current crisis differs fundamentally from previous US-Iran confrontations. The ongoing protests have created internal pressure on Tehran's leadership that didn't exist during earlier standoffs. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei faces the gravest challenge to his authority since taking power in 1989. Internal estimates from Iran's Ministry of Health suggest at least 30,000 people died in the first 48 hours of the January crackdown, making these some of the largest massacres in modern Iranian history. This internal weakness may explain Iran's recent diplomatic overtures. President Masoud Pezeshkian has publicly signaled willingness to negotiate directly with the United States, while authorizing veteran diplomat Ali Larijani to conduct preliminary talks. Scheduled negotiations in Oman's capital Muscat represent the most significant diplomatic engagement between the two countries since the collapse of the nuclear deal. Iran's negotiating position remains complicated by its continued nuclear activities. The International Atomic Energy Agency hasn't verified Iran's uranium stockpile for over 7 months, leaving uncertainty about exactly how much weapons-grade material the country possesses. Iran's demand for guarantees against future military strikes appears designed to preserve whatever nuclear capabilities survived Operation Midnight Hammer. The Navy's deployment occurs against this backdrop of diplomatic uncertainty and military posturing. Iran has shifted its military doctrine from defensive to offensive, recently deploying its Khorramshahr 4 long-range missile in an underground facility. Chief of Staff Abdolrahim Musavi warned that Iran was fully prepared to give vengeful blows against the U.S. military and its allies. Military analysts question whether Iran's forces could effectively challenge the Lincoln strike group in direct combat. The carrier's nearly 90 aircraft represent more air power than most countries possess in their entire military. The F-35C fighters aboard can operate in contested airspace, where Iranian air defenses would destroy conventional aircraft. Meanwhile, the Lincoln's escort destroyers carry enough Tomahawk missiles to neutralize Iran's most critical military infrastructure. The strategic calculus facing both sides reflects the complex intersection of domestic politics, international diplomacy, and military capabilities. Trump's maximum pressure approach seeks to extract concessions through the credible threat of force, while avoiding the massive costs of actual invasion. The Navy's deployment provides him with flexible options, from limited strikes on Revolutionary Guard assets to broader operations against Iran's military infrastructure. For Iran's leadership, the choice appears increasingly stark. Continued defiance risks triggering American military action that could destroy what remains of their nuclear program and military capabilities. Yet compromise might fatally undermine their authority among hardline supporters who view confrontation with America as essential to the Islamic Republic's identity. The Strait of Hormuz remains the potential flashpoint where these competing pressures might explode into open conflict. Iranian officials have threatened to turn the waterway into a place of massacre and hell for the U.S. if attacked. Such threats reflect Iran's asymmetric strategy of threatening global economic disruption to deter American military action. The Navy's current deployment appears specifically designed to call this bluff. The Lincoln Strike Group possesses the air power needed to keep the strait open, even under sustained Iranian attack. Meanwhile, the littoral combat ships, USS Santa Barbara, USS Canberra, and USS Tulsa remain ready for mine-clearing operations should Iran attempt to block the waterway with explosives. As diplomatic talks approach in Muscat, both sides face fundamental questions about their long-term objectives. The United States seeks to prevent Iranian nuclear weapons while maintaining regional stability and protecting energy supplies. Iran needs sanctions relief and security guarantees, while preserving enough deterrent capability to ensure regime survival. The Navy's massive deployment reflects America's determination to negotiate from a position of overwhelming strength. Yet the protests raging across Iranian cities suggest that time may be running out for diplomatic solutions. The Islamic Republic faces an existential crisis that military force alone cannot resolve, while the United States confronts the persistent challenge of containing Iranian ambitions without triggering a regional war that could reshape the Middle East for generations. The Abraham Lincoln and her escorts continue their patrol in the Arabian Sea, a floating reminder that America retains the military capability to devastate Iran's remaining nuclear facilities and military infrastructure. Whether that capability will be used depends on choices made in the coming weeks by leaders in Washington, Tehran, and capitals across the region. The stakes could not be higher, and the margin for miscalculation grows thinner with each passing day.